What's going on, operators, and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about my reasons why you should still get an RPAL or a restricted possession and acquisition license in 2024 if you haven't done so already. Now, I've done a lot of videos explaining the non-restricted and the restricted PAL, the two most common types of firearms licenses here in Canada, as well as things like why or even how to become a firearms owner. So if you haven't seen those, I'll leave a link to a few of them up there in the top right-hand corner of your screen, as well as down below in the description of the video. Unfortunately, a lot of people are hesitant to just get their regular PALs, much less their restricted PALs, because of the nonsense that our government has caused and the hostile political nature in general surrounding firearms ownership in Canada. Unfortunately, at least in my opinion, I feel like the government has not done a good enough job addressing root causes of violence, especially gun violence in our country, but yet they've implemented legislation and regulations that disproportionately affect the group of people that are most likely to abide by the law and use responsibly the firearms that they got legally. So again, without further ado, here's a list of my reasons why you should absolutely have an RPAL in 2024. If you have your own, make sure to share those down below, and if you'd like to continue the conversation at length, make sure to join our Discord community linked down below, which is over 150 active users strong now. We'd love to see you there. Let's get started. So we're going in no particular order here, but the first thing I want to talk about is education and training. It is a cornerstone of firearm ownership in Canada, and you'll know that if you've done even just a little bit of research into the subject or perhaps watched a few CO videos on the matter. Education and training are an absolute pillar of gun culture and gun ownership in Canada. It's something that everybody in the country needs to do, both for their non-restricted and for their restricted licenses. It helps us to be more cognizant, it helps us to be more responsible, and for us to understand the privilege that we have in owning firearms, because unlike our brothers and sisters to the south, we do not have a right to it as I believe we should. So, gaining more knowledge is something that will always be helpful to you, if not today, because of the fact that handguns, yes, have been banned by the OAC and unfortunately cemented into law by C-21, not to mention all the long guns, the semi-auto long guns that were banned as a result of the similar OIC in 2020. Those things can always change, and the knowledge that you gain today can be used and applied in situations tomorrow. So don't wait for that to happen. Even if you're not planning on owning a pistol today, because you can't, or maybe even an SBR, which you can still benefit from that knowledge and apply that knowledge and use it in a meaningful way in the future to be a more learned, responsible, and cognizant firearms owner. So next up, let's talk about some inevitabilities, which I may or may not have foreshadowed a little earlier. Nothing is set in stone, and nothing lasts forever, and that includes tyrannical, totalitarian dictatorships like that of the Trudeau regime. And while, just like you, I hope that they are ousted from office as soon as possible and replaced with rational, sensible, and intelligent people that can lead this country down the road of greatness where we once were, I think that if that does happen, and that if is becoming more of a when these days, then that might have some positive outlooks for firearm owners all across the country. And when that does happen, and we see some positive changes to some of the regulations and legislation that governs the ownership of firearms, but wouldn't you rather just be ready for that? So it's never too early, is my point, to get the education, the training, the licensing, and everything that you need out of the way so that when these changes inevitably do come, in whatever way they come, at least you'll be ready, as opposed to lining up behind hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of people who will be reacting to the changes as they happen and having to wait an awful long time. And if you think that the RCMP is busy today, just imagine what will happen if suddenly you can own a pistol again, or suddenly you can buy an AR-15 again at your local gun shop. Could you imagine how many people are going to be applying for their RPALs then, right? So, in my opinion, it's better to be prepared, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, because you never know what the future holds, but you do know that nothing lasts forever, and change could potentially be on the horizon. If those reasons weren't good enough for you to get your RPAL in 2024, then hopefully this last one will be. It's a little more pragmatic and hopeful than the others, but I gotta be honest with you, it's something I had no idea about until I realized that I couldn't own a handgun of my very own. A perk that's unadvertised and off the menu, but yet very much available to anyone who has an RPAL, and facilitated very well, might I add, by the RCMP. I'll tell you about that just a little bit after I tell you this story of heartbreak and how I learned about this perk's existence. It was 2022 in October, and I was sitting in a classroom taking the Canadian Restricted Firearms Safety course. I was hopeful that in due time I'd be able to get my practical and written test aced and get my course paperwork so that I could submit that to the RCMP alongside with my application and get approved for an RPAL so that I could go to my local gun shop and pick up a beautiful new 1911. Well, unfortunately, I was very saddened to find out that my hopes would be dashed because only 3 weeks from the date of that course was the deadline for when you could purchase your last handgun. Unfortunately, after that point in time, it was no longer legal to purchase, sell, transfer, or otherwise hand down your handguns to anybody, including your children. If you were to pass away, you want to give your handguns to your children, it was no longer legal to even do that. And while that's a topic for a completely different video, I was pretty disgusted about the fact that I wasn't going to have the opportunity, despite all this effort that I've put in, to own a handgun of my very own. Well, that's exactly what happened. It took me about 2 months to get my license, and I was really down in the dumps about the whole situation. I felt like I had put all this work in for nothing, and I realized that there was not much more that I could do about it except for wait for brighter days at some point in the future. But what I found out from a friend of mine, and as you know that to be the truth because you've seen firearm reviews on the channel which were restricted, is that there's a little perk that comes with your RPAL that, like I said before, is a little off menu, is not advertised, it's not something that is talked about very often, but that some people with an RPAL probably know about. And that's that despite the fact that you can't buy, sell, transfer, give, or otherwise hand down your handgun to somebody else, you can let them borrow it. Yeah, how crazy is that? So there are some caveats and there are some bravados and stipulations. But I gotta be honest that the RCMP has been really amazing in accommodating me, at least from my own personal experience, what I can tell you. They've been fantastic at accommodating me borrowing firearms from a friend of mine for the purposes of reviewing them on the channel right here for you, and also just taking them down to the range so that I can enjoy it for recreation with my wife, who also really was upset that I couldn't get my handgun of my own in time. So there are some things that you need to do. You do need to go and speak to the RCMP. There is the CFP federal line that I'll link the number for down below. You can give them a call and just say, hey, I'd like to borrow a restricted firearm from a friend of mine, whether it's a short-barreled rifle or whether it's a handgun, it doesn't matter. You have to remember they are not prohibited devices like the AR-15 was as a result of that 2020 OIC. So while you can't buy or sell them or transfer them, you can still borrow them. And you can borrow them for 6 months at a time. But all you need is an ATT, which is an authorization to transport. And that's not the one that's on the back of your RPAL, by the way, which allows you to take that firearm from your home to the range and back again. That is a separate ATT that you'll need to take the firearm from your friend's place to your place and then back by the time it expires. You'll also need a borrowing permit, which is usually given in conjunction with the ATT by the RCMP. That's all you need. It's very simple and it can last for up to 6 months. So even if you can't buy your own handgun right now, you can borrow one. And you can have the joys of shooting either for recreation or in a discipline like IDPA or IPSC, or sharing that love of firearms with your family and friends that you otherwise might not be able to until the government changes hands, and maybe not even then. So consider that it's an option for you, and if not the best reason, then a very good reason to get your RPAL in 2024. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate you making it all the way until the end of the video. And if this or any of our other videos have been helpful to you, you can help us out in a really big way by just remembering to subscribe with notifications on and liking and sharing the video with your friends. It really helps the discoverability of our content on this platform and helps us to reach out and help other people as well. Of course, if you have the means and would like to go above and beyond supporting the channel on a more regular basis, like these wonderful people have, then you can of course join our VIP access program. Our links are down below. All of your perks and rewards are on Discord as well, which will be also linked below. So come and join us there. Of course, if you'd like to just prefer to keep me well caffeinated, you can use the super thanks button down below or to your right, or you can just check out our website. I make some awesome products there for all of you, and that's another great way to help support the channel more directly. Whatever way you do it, just know that you've got my thanks, and appreciate you sticking around all the way to the end. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, happy shooting.